Do you like D&D? Do you like ttrpgs? Are you a weeb who likes anime just like me? Are you tired of current D&D, WotC, and their really expensive books? Boy, do I have an offer for you. The ttrpg that crushed D&D in Japan is finally getting translated to English. Sword World RPG is so popular in its native Japan that it's completely eclipsed Dungeons and Dragons, and it's finally coming to the West. I'm coming. I'm coming. Dungeons and Dragons is the first, and that's the last, name in ttrpgs for many Western gamers, but that's not the case all over the world. Sword World RPG has been the premier fantasy RPG on the Japanese market since 1989, with a cultural impact on the Japanese fantasy genre equivalent to D&D's impact in the West, and for the first time ever, it's set to receive an official English language edition. I read about this system before. At some point, I wanted to make TTRPG related content, and then we had the huge debacle with WotC and whatnot, so I decided to not do it. Also, I stopped playing TTRPGs altogether. And I took another look at the font translation book for this. I will give more information at the end. I think it's interesting. Mugen Gaming, a Kansas-based firm that localizes Japanese games for the US and international markets, announced its partnership with Sword World RPG's original publisher group, SNE, with its blog post on Tuesday. The firm plans to crowdfund an English language version of the current Sword World 2.5 core rulebook, a Kickstarter in 2026. It's like 400 pages, so it has a lot of information, and hopes to support Sword World long-term with expansions, adventures, and community resources. They do have 1 billion books. They're not as expensive as D&D, not in Japan at least. Sword World is an incredibly culturally significant game in Japan, which grew out of D&D, but entirely eclipsed its parent. When you encounter D&D classes and D&D race Japanese media, they are far more likely to be inspired by Sword World and the related Lord of War novel series than they are by D&D itself. I've realized. When translated versions of the D&D Red Box made to Japan in '85, it was picked up by a very small community of enthusiasts. In '86, gamer Ryo Mizuno began publishing replay write-ups of his group's D&D sessions in Comtech magazine under the title Record of Lawless War. If you know about anime, you know about Record of Lawless War. I didn't know it was literally Japan's Dragonlance. That's kind of funny. It wasn't until I read this, yes, this is pre-read, which is kind of crazy to me. It was the way the Japanese gaming market's first major exposure to D&D, and to D&D style high fantasy. Lord of the Rings was late in arriving in Japan and had an obtuse translation, and just didn't have the cultural impact there. Ah, what a shame. The Lord of War replays were so popular that Mizuno was able to re-edit them into series of novels that became Japan's first high fantasy blockbuster series. It also has 2 animes, and nowadays it also has a Metroidvania game. Never played it. Could be interesting at some point. Mizuno and his friends set up group SNE to pursue RPG publishing projects, attempted to collaborate with D&D's original publisher TSR on an official Lotus World source book for D&D. It never happened, but imagine the possibilities. That could be really crazy. They found the firm to be slow-moving and unwilling to compromise in many such cases. Rather than waiting around, Group SNE created its second game, Sword World, which became the official Lotus War RPG. The connection to the fantasy blockbuster, and the fact that it was sold as a series of dirt cheap paperbacks compared to expensive imported hardback D&D books, meant that Sword World utterly eclipsed its inspiration. Fan translations of Sword World exist already, I know, but it will be very interesting to see what an official licensed localization can do with this venerable source material. Japanese RPGs are made different. The box set above shows several different starter adventures for Sword World 2.5. Will make it to the US? I hope so. Can we make this a little bit bigger? Nah, it's kinda small. They give you a bunch of stuff. Not like D&D, I suppose. But now you might be thinking, okay, I played TTRPGs in the West, so I'm assuming you probably understand D&D. I'm gonna use 5e as a base because that's the only one I've played. So, ability scores, you will be seeing similar numbers, not quite the same. Ability modifiers, you will be seeing similar numbers, but not quite the same. Ability scores are a little bit different. Instead of having 3 physical and 3 mental, you have 2 skill, 2 body, and 2 spirit. I'm not quite sure what's the difference between dexterity and agility, for example, but I don't know, that's how it works. I've never played, I've only read the book. Your final ability scores are an addition of the roll you get for the specific role and its parent group, I suppose. That's given by your background, which is really strange. So, you will be rolling dice a lot. Speaking of dice, I didn't mention this, it's not a d20 system, it's a d6 system. You use 2d6 for a lot of things, so it's really important. And of course you still have classes, but they're not as important as the classes in D&D. Well, that is wrong. They're not as strict. You're not playing just a fighter. You will be probably getting an assortment of different classes. You are meant to, actually. For example, if you want to play a frontliner, you're probably gonna be either a fighter or a grappler, which is similar to a monk, but it seems like a little bit better. It's gonna give you stuff to fight, but you're gonna keep getting EXP, investing in that. Each level, it's gonna cost a lot more. So maybe you want to invest in other classes. You have 3 main groups: the warrior classes, the wizard classes, and the other classes, which are pretty much just utility. They're just utility, but that doesn't mean they're bad. For example, the book I've read, it gives you a bunch of example characters that you can use. So the first one is the classic fighter guy. It's a guy with an armor and a sword. But he has like a couple of levels in the fighter class, for fighting, obviously, but also has a level in the other class Scout and the other class Ranger. The amount of classes you have acts as some sort of proficiency bonus from D&D. It's similar, it's not quite the same, but you use it to calculate a bunch of interrupted stats that are actually really important. For example, to calculate extra damage, sure, use your stats, but you also use the amount of levels you have in warrior classes, which is pretty important. You also have a major and minor classes. For example, a minor class for the warrior group would be Fencer, which are more like crit 1v1 kind of fellas. But I don't think they work on their own. You probably need a main build of fighter for that. Once again, I don't really have a lot of experience. And if you want to do anything that's additional stuff that might be like useful for exploration interaction, you probably want the other classes. Ranger also helps not only with survival stuff, but also with healing, which is always really nice. And I guess the best example would be the paladin they give you, right? You don't have an actual paladin class, so obviously what do? Well, you get a bunch of levels in fighter, because you're gonna be a frontliner using armor and whatnot. And you're gonna get a bunch of levels in, not sage, priest, cleric, the divine caster, so you can actually use divine magic. I think that makes sense. There are also differences between D&D that I find to be quite interesting, because you have like ranks for your equipment, and you need to get the appropriate feats to equip those pieces of gear. So it's not like, oh, I have a really strong sword. Well, yeah, it's rank A, so you can only equip like to rank C, similar to Fire Emblem, I suppose, in a way. So that's really interesting. I don't think this system has a crafting system, which is something I quite enjoy. But from what I've seen, if you want an alternative, and if you're into anime, take a look. It seems pretty decent, and it has like 1 billion books too. What is the possible price? I have no idea. In Japan, the core book is like 2,640 yen, which is about 18 USD. I don't think this is going to cost less than 25 or 30 in the West, sadly. But I do hope this is successful in a way, because let's be real, D&D needs a rival. And if it's gonna be anime, I'm all for it.